Hello, dear hearts, it's Nimbrascale here. Come, settle yourself beneath your blankets. Adjust your pillow just so. Let your shoulders drop. Let the day fall away like autumn leaves drifting to soft ground. Tonight, I'd like to take you somewhere gentle. A place where lanterns glow soft amber against cottage windows, where the scent of warm bread drifts through the twilight air, and where even the dragons sleep early. Let's continue with Elara's journey. Cala's home was a wonder of woven artistry. The walls curved in spirals, each branch interlaced with such precision that not even the smallest draft could slip through. Dried flowers hung from the ceiling, lavender, chamomile, rose hips, filling the air with a perfume that made Elara think of summer preserved in amber. "Sit, sit," Cala urged, gesturing to cushions stuffed with wool and covered in cloth dyed the colors of sunset. "I'll make tea." As Cala moved about her kitchen, Elara noticed something. Every object in the house, every basket, every mat, every small decorative piece, told a story in its pattern. There were spirals that seemed to dance, geometric shapes that interlocked like puzzles, flowing lines that reminded her of water, of wind, of things that could not be held but only felt. "You're looking at the patterns," Cala said, returning with 2 clay cups steaming with mint tea. She settled across from Elara with a knowing smile. "In Rivenweave, we believe that everything worth remembering should be woven into the world. A birth, a wedding, a good harvest, a loss." She ran her finger along the arm of her chair, tracing a complex knot. "This pattern here, this is my mother's name. And this one," she pointed to a different section, "this is the year the river flooded and we all worked together to save the village." "Your whole history," Elara breathed, "woven into everything you touch." "Exactly," Cala sipped her tea. "When I am gone, these patterns remain. My grandchildren will trace them and know, here lived Cala, here is what she loved." Elara thought of her lanterns, of the simple act of bringing light. Was that not its own kind of weaving, threading brightness through the dark? "Could you teach me?" The words left her mouth before she'd fully formed the thought. "To weave, I mean just something small." Cala's face broke into a radiant smile. "I was hoping you'd ask." They worked as the afternoon melted into evening. Cala brought out supple willow branches, still green and flexible, and showed Elara how to hold them, how to cross one over another, how to tuck and twist and pull until a pattern began to emerge. "Don't fight the material," Cala instructed gently. "Listen to it, feel where it wants to go." At first, Elara's fingers were clumsy. Her weaving looked like a tangle, a mistake. But Cala never scolded, never corrected harshly. She simply guided Elara's hands, murmuring encouragement. "There, yes, feel that, that's the rhythm." And slowly, oh so slowly, Elara began to understand. It was like lighting lanterns in a way. The same patience, the same attention to small details, the same love poured into repetitive motion until it became meditation, prayer, art. By the time the sun set, Elara had woven a small mat. It wasn't perfect. The edges were uneven, the pattern simple, but it was hers, made by her own hands, woven with her own story, the story of a lantern keeper who left home to find what lay beyond the hills. Cala held it up to the fading light, examining it with the eye of a master. Then she nodded, satisfied. "You have the gift," she said. "Not of the hands, though those will improve, but of the heart. You weave with intention, that's what matters." She folded the mat carefully and handed it back. "Take this with you. And remember, you are always weaving your story, Elara, with every choice, every step, every kindness." That night, Elara slept in Cala's woven home, wrapped in blankets that smelled of river reeds and sunshine. and in her dreams she wove light itself, golden threads that spiraled out across the world, connecting every lantern she'd ever lit, every hand she'd ever held, every heart that had welcomed her. 3 mornings later, Elara stood at the base of the mountains. The compass had led her here, away from Rivenweave, across meadows thick with wildflowers, past streams that sang over smooth stones. And now the path turned upward. The mountains were even more magnificent up close. They rose like ancient giants, their faces carved by wind and time. Pine trees clung to impossible slopes. Eagles circled overhead, their cries sharp and clear in the thin air. Elara adjusted her pack, heavier now with gifts: Millicent's bread, though mostly eaten, old Garrick's knife, Pip's river stone, Rowan's golden leaf, and now Calla's woven mat, folded small and precious. She began to climb. The path was steep but well-trodden. Clearly, others had walked this way before. She found evidence of them: small cairns of stacked stones, a wooden marker pointing upward with words carved in a language she didn't know, a rest spot with a bench made from a fallen log. She walked for hours, up and up and up. Her legs burned, her breath came short, but something in her sang, a wild, free song that matched the wind rushing through the pines. By midday, she stopped to rest. She sat on a flat boulder, unwrapped the last of Millicent's bread, and ate slowly, savoring each bite. Below her, the world spread out like a tapestry. She could see the forest she'd passed through, the valley of Rivenweave, tiny as a child's toy, and far, far to the west, almost invisible in the distance, the 2 gentle hills that cradled Hearthshire. How small it looked! How far she'd come! A sound made her turn. Descending the path toward her was a figure, not human, no, larger, covered in shaggy fur the color of storm clouds, walking on 4 legs, powerful and sure. A mountain goat, no, bigger. As it drew closer, Elara realized what it was. A yak. A great, gentle yak with curved horns decorated with ribbons and small brass bells that chimed with each step. And on its back, nestled in a nest of colorful blankets, sat a tiny, ancient person. The yak stopped beside her boulder. The person, Elara couldn't tell if they were man or woman, so wizened and folded was their face, peered down at her with eyes bright as stars. "Well now," they said in a voice like wind through canyon stones. "A climber, and not from around here, I'd wager." "No," Elara said, smiling despite her breathlessness. "I'm from Hearthshire, far to the west." "Hearthshire?" the ancient person cackled. "I know it, went through there. Oh, 60 years ago, 70 times a slippery thing." They patted the yak's neck fondly. "This is Grandmother Peak. The mountain, I mean, and I'm Tem. I carry supplies up to the summit shrine." "There's a shrine at the top." "Oh yes, very important shrine. People come from all over to leave their wishes, their regrets, their dreams. The wind carries them to the heavens." Tem studied her with those sharp eyes. "You're looking for something." It wasn't a question. Elara touched the compass in her pocket. "I'm following a story." "Ah," Tem nodded sagely. "The best reason to climb, better than glory, better than conquest." They rummaged in their blankets and produced a small package wrapped in waxed cloth. "Here, take this. You'll need energy for the summit." Elara unwrapped it. Inside were dense, dark cakes studded with nuts and dried fruit. "Journey cakes," Tem explained, "made with honey and oats and a bit of old magic." Elara climbed for the rest of that day. The journey cakes Tem had given her tasted of honey and mountain herbs, cardamom and something else, something that warmed her from the inside and made each step feel lighter, easier, as though the mountain itself was helping her along. The air grew thinner, colder. She wrapped herself in the spare shawl Kala had insisted she take, its woven pattern now a comfort against her skin. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold and deep purple, Elara rounded a final switchback. And there it was. The summit. Not a sharp peak, as she'd imagined, but a wide, flat space, as if some ancient giant had rested here and smoothed the stone with the palm of their hand. And in the center stood the shrine. It was simple, beautiful in its simplicity. A cairn of white stones taller than Elara, built with such care that each rock fit perfectly with the next. Woven around it were strings, hundreds of them, thousands, each one holding scraps of cloth, strips of paper, small offerings that fluttered and danced in the constant wind. The prayers, the wishes, the dreams Tem had spoken of. Elara walked slowly toward the shrine, her footsteps the only sound besides the whisper of all those fluttering hopes. She could read some of the prayers, written in languages she recognized. Keep my son safe on his journey. Let the rains come. Help me forgive. May I find courage. Each one a small piece of someone's heart, left here in this thin, sacred air. She stood before the shrine, unsure what to do. She had no prayer prepared, no specific wish. But then she reached into her pack and drew out the golden leaf Rowan had given her. It still hummed faintly, still held that impossible warmth. She tied it carefully to one of the strings with a piece of thread from her hem. And as she did, she whispered, not a wish but a thank you. Thank you for the journey. Thank you for showing me the world is wider than I knew. Thank you for every kindness along the way. The leaf chimed once softly, as the wind caught it. And Elara felt something shift inside her, a settling, like a puzzle piece finding its place. She had been searching for something out here beyond Hearthshire, but now she understood. She hadn't been searching for a destination. She'd been searching for herself. For the Elara who could be both the faithful keeper of home and the brave walker of roads, both the lighter of lanterns and the seeker of stories. She didn't have to choose, she could be both, she could carry both. She was enough. As the last light faded and the stars began to prick through the darkening sky, more stars than she'd ever seen, a river of light spilling across the heavens, Elara made camp beside the shrine. She wrapped herself in blankets, ate another journey cake, and watched the universe wheel overhead. And for the first time since leaving home, she felt completely, utterly at peace. Dawn came soft and cold. Elara woke to find frost sparkling on her blankets like scattered diamonds. Her breath misted in the air, but the sky was clear, a blue so deep and pure it seemed to sing. She packed her things slowly, reverently, taking one last look at the shrine with its 1,000 fluttering prayers. Then she began her descent. Going down was different than going up, easier on the lungs, harder on the knees. But Elara found a rhythm, and the journey cake still warmed her from within. The compass in her pocket had stopped pulling. When she checked it, the needle spun lazily, as if saying, "You found what you needed. Now simply go." So she went. Down through the pine forests, past the boulder where she'd met Tem. Down and down until the air grew thicker and warmer and she could breathe deeply again without effort. By afternoon of the second day, she emerged from the mountain path into a valley she'd never seen. Oh, my dear ones, if I could paint this valley for you with words alone. It was autumn here, full and ripe and glorious. The trees were every color imaginable, crimson and amber, gold and rust, deep burgundy and bright orange. They covered the hillsides like patchwork quilts, like stained glass windows lit from behind. A river ran through the center, wide and gentle, its surface reflecting all those impossible colors so that it looked like liquid sunset. And dotted throughout the valley were sculptures, no, not quite. Painted stones. Someone or many someones had taken stones from the river, stones as big as barrels or as small as eggs, and painted them. Decorated them with intricate patterns, with scenes, with faces and animals and abstract swirls of color. They were everywhere, lining the path, stacked in cairns, arranged in spirals and circles, a garden of painted stories. Elara walked slowly through them, marveling. On one stone, someone had painted a night sky full of constellations. On another, a family gathered around a table. On a third, simply hands, two hands reaching for each other, fingers about to touch. Beautiful, aren't they? Elara turned. A young girl sat on a large, flat stone, paintbrush in hand. She couldn't have been more than 12, with paint smudged on her cheek and her hair tied back with a scrap of bright cloth. They are, Elara agreed. Did you make these? Some of them, the girl said proudly, but most are from others. People come through the painted valley and leave a stone. It's tradition. A way of saying, I was here, I mattered, I added beauty to the world. What's your name? Elara asked. Senna. The girl held up her current project, a smooth river stone on which she was painting a bird in flight. What's yours? Elara. Are you going to paint a stone, Elara? The question caught her off guard. I'm not an artist. Senna laughed, a bright, unburdened sound. Neither am I, not really, but that's not the point. The point is to leave something of yourself, something true. She hopped down from her perch and rummaged through a collection of paint pots and brushes stored in a hollow log. Here, take these. Find a stone that speaks to you. Paint what's in your heart. Elara accepted the paints and brushes hesitantly. What if I make something ugly? Then it will be ugly and true, Senna said matter-of-factly. That's still worth something. Elara walked along the riverbank until she found her stone. It was smooth and oval, about the size of both her palms pressed together. The color of cream, with fine gray veins running through it. She sat cross-legged on the soft grass, spread out the paints, red and yellow and blue and green and white and black, and stared at the blank stone. What was in her heart? She thought of Hearthshire, of Millicent and old Garrick and young Pip, of her cottage with its climbing roses. She thought of the listening tree and Rowan's song, of Calla's woven home, of Tim and the summit shrine. She thought of all the miles she'd walked, all the kindness she'd been shown. And slowly she began to paint. She painted a lantern first, simple, golden, glowing. Around it she painted a path that spiraled outward, representing the journey, the roads taken and yet to take. Along the path she added tiny details, a leaf, a woven pattern, a mountain, hands reaching out. And at the edge of the stone, coming full circle back to the lantern, she painted a tiny cottage with roses climbing its walls. A home. Not a prison, not a limitation, but a chosen place, a beloved place, a place she would return to different than when she left. When the painting was finished, Elara held it up to catch the afternoon light. It wasn't perfect. The lines weren't straight. The proportions weren't quite right. But it was true. It was hers. She placed it carefully among the other painted stones, adding her voice to the chorus of all who had passed through this valley. I was here. I mattered. I added beauty to the world. Senna appeared beside her, tilting her head to examine the work. It's lovely, she said softly. The lantern glows even in paint. You have light in your hands." Elara smiled, thinking of Rowan's words at the listening tree. "You carry light wherever you go." "Thank you, Senna, for the paints, for the encouragement. Thank you for leaving something beautiful." The girl hugged her suddenly, fiercely. "Safe travels, Elara, wherever you're going." "I'm going home," Elara said, and realized as she said it that the words filled her with joy, not resignation. Home, yes, it was time. The compass no longer pulled her anywhere. Its needle spun freely, content. So Elara simply turned west and began to walk. She retraced her steps, not exactly, for the world never looks quite the same in reverse, but through familiar territories now made her own by the walking of them. She passed through Rivenweave, where Calla welcomed her back with warm embraces and fresh mint tea. They spent an evening together, and Elara showed her the woven mat she'd made, now softened and loved from being carried so far. Calla traced its pattern with gentle fingers and nodded. "You've woven new patterns since we met. I can see them in your eyes." She passed through the whispering woods, and though she didn't see Rowan, she stopped at the listening tree and placed her hand on its silver bark. The tree sang to her again, but this time the melody had changed. It held mountain winds and painted stones, woven stories and summit prayers. Her song had grown wider, deeper. She crossed meadows where autumn had deepened into its fullest expression. The trees blazed. The light slanted gold. The air smelled of apples and wood smoke. And with each mile, her heart grew lighter and fuller at once. She was going home. Not because she had to. Because she chose to. It was twilight when Elara crested the western hills and looked down into the valley of Hearthshire. The first thing she noticed was the lanterns. All 47 of them glowing soft and golden in the gathering dusk. Someone, Millicent, perhaps, or old Garrick or young Pip, had lit them faithfully, just as they'd promised. The village glowed like a constellation fallen to earth. Tears sprang to Elara's eyes. She had carried light with her across mountains and through forests, but here was light that had waited for her. Light kept burning in her absence. Light tended by love. She walked down the hillside, her footsteps quick now, eager. The first person to see her was Pip, who was driving his sheep home for the evening. He stopped, stared, then let out a whoop of joy that echoed across the valley. "She's back, Elara's back." And suddenly, oh suddenly, people were emerging from their cottages. Millicent came running, apron flying, arms outstretched. Old Garrick stumped out with his cane, his gruff face split by a grin. Others followed, streaming toward her like a river of welcome. Millicent reached her first, enveloping her in a hug that smelled of flower and cinnamon and home. "Oh, sweet girl, we missed you. We missed you so much." "I missed you too," Elara said, her voice breaking. "All of you." They surrounded her, asking questions, exclaiming over her sun-browned face and her well-worn boots, touching her arms as if to make sure she was real. Old Garrick cleared his throat gruffly. "Did you find it?" he asked. "What you were looking for?" Elara looked around at their beloved faces, at the glowing lanterns, at her village nestled safe in its valley. She thought of everything she'd seen, everyone she'd met, all the pieces of herself she'd discovered on the road. "Yes," she said simply, "I found it." "And what was it?" Millicent asked gently. Elara smiled. "I found that I can leave and return, that I can wander and still belong, that home is not a cage, it's a light I carry with me and a light that waits for me." She paused. "And I found that the world is full of kindness. People who share their songs, their skills, their stories. People who light lanterns for each other." Pip tugged on her sleeve. "Did you bring back stories? Will you tell us?" "Yes," Elara laughed. So many stories, but first, she looked toward the village green where the lanterns glowed. First, let me do what I came home to do. She walked to her cottage, unlocked the door that Millicent had kept oiled and clean. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it, but also somehow different, more precious, more chosen. She found her copper pole with its flame that never went out. And as the stars began to appear overhead, Elara walked the winding paths of Hearthshire, checking each of the 47 lanterns that someone else had lit. But this time she didn't walk alone. The villagers walked with her, Millicent and Garrick and Pip and all the others, and as they walked, Elara began to tell her stories. Of the listening tree, of Calla's woven home, of Tem and the mountain shrine, of Senna and the painted valley. Her voice wove through the night air, golden as lantern light. And Hearthshire listened. Dear ones, this is where I'll leave Elara tonight. But know that her story didn't end there. In the years that followed, Elara became known not just as the Lantern Keeper, but as the Lantern Keeper who walked far, who brought back stories, who taught the village that home and horizon could exist together in the same heart. She wove as Calla had taught her, creating beautiful patterns that held her journeys. She sang, as Rowan had taught her, and the village learned new songs. She painted stones and gave them as gifts, each one a small piece of beauty added to the world. And every few years when the restlessness returned, as it always did, gentle and persistent as spring, she would pack her bag, take up the compass that now sat on her mantle, and walk beyond the hills again. But she always came home, because she understood now what perhaps we all must learn: that we are not meant to stay in one place forever, nor to wander endlessly without rest. We are meant to be like lanterns ourselves, sometimes moving, bringing light to new places, sometimes still, offering a beacon for others to find their way home. We are meant to gather stories and share them, to weave beauty, to paint truth, to climb mountains and descend again, to leave and to return, and to know that both are sacred. Elara understood that the greatest journey is not to some distant land, but to the fullness of our own hearts. And that love, for home, for others, for the wide world, is the lamp that lights all paths.